Supernatural, Season 1, Episode 3, Dead in the Water. Uh, Written by Sarah Gamble and Rael Tucker. Directed by Kim Manners. September 27th, 2005. This might have been when I had pink eye in kindergarten. Anywho, you don't give a shit about that, but this show continues in the Monster of the Week format to evolve the characters. At the beginning of the episode, we get that Sam, he's not having any of Dean's hooking up, and it's probably because his girlfriend just died, right? And he also really desperately is focusing on just finding Dad. And he's pissed that the trail's getting colder, and Dean is, of course, like, hey, I want to find him just as much. I don't think he does. Honestly, I think that Sam, at this point, his focus is revenge, but deep down he knows that he needs his dad to be able to defeat Yellow Eyes, which is, uh, I think that's a pretty deep aspect, but that's all just in the first scene. I was hoping I didn't forget that thought before I got to recording this. Um, this episode deals with our first vengeful spirit, and two dudes, when they were young kids, killed another kid, and now that the dam that they killed him in is going to run dry, the ghost is getting its revenge while it still can, which I don't know why it waited 35 years. I don't know. But it kills the first three characters we're introduced to in the episode. It introduces us to this little family, and the brother says something sexist because this is 2005, and then the sister goes out and she drowns, and then the brother drowns later. Sam and Dean, based on this one woman drowning, it's enough for them to go to town, which makes sense because she's an athlete swimmer and she drowned. Like that's a lot, and plus I'm pretty sure that like the brother saw something, and like anyway, they get to town and Dean fancies, I think he's the sheriff. He fancies the sheriff's daughter. Several times throughout this episode, they go into like, your children dying is worse than death. They mention that several times. And on one of those times, Dean glances over at Sam, and that, I think, is one of the biggest foreshadowing moments of the episode. As we all know, Dean mostly raised Sam, but also the misdirect of like that happening after Dean's already been saved by John, and that being the main thing they're probably foreshadowing here. I don't know. I love the whole aspect of that. This episode did actually get me to cry when Jake gives his life for Lucas at the end there, which I was not expecting going in, but that happened. The episode deals with kids going through trauma and having a psychic link because of it at a young age, and that's, I'm pretty sure there's a lot of science behind that. They reference it at least with Sam, but because this is a show, I'm not gonna say that like I believe it, but I haven't done the research. Of course, Lucas is able to draw like extremely well and basically solve the case for the boys, which is interesting. And I think that the main thing that this episode does uh, is it drives forward like how good Sam and Dean are, because like how you gonna one up the save the cat moment? Well, the save the kid moment. And Sam also gets his hero moment when he saves the mom. And I like that they don't even really solve the case. Jake takes responsibility for the murder and apologizes, and then like goes into like taking the revenge instead of letting his grandson die, which follows the theme of like kids dying is worse than death. And again, it further foreshadows the plot of seasons 1 through 3, where John and Dean trade their lives for Dean and Sam, respectively. So, I don't know, I think that that was all genius. I think that because of some of these things, it is better than Wendigo. um, Also, there's just uh, nothing in this episode was really boring to me. Kind of went by real quick. I love that they say they're Agent Ford and Hamill because obviously Han Solo and Luke Skywalker were like inspiration for the dynamic of the characters. Love that idea too because Dean is like a total just badass, and Han Solo is basically just a total badass, right? And Luke, he's the hero, but he's also like if you watch the storyline and you think of him as like on the edge of always going towards what Anakin went towards, but not at the end. It makes sense as far as like replicating that storyline too, because throughout season 4, they're showing him going more towards like an Anakin thing, which I don't know. I enjoyed the way they used that. Of course, that has nothing to do with this episode, besides the fact that they actually say Ford and Hamill at this episode, which I don't know. I love Star Wars. Disney bought it. There's not much else I can really have to add to this episode. I mean, the more story heavy this episode is, the more I'll probably have to say about it. I enjoyed the Monster of the Week because it reminded me of The Grudge, but it like not really. Just the way like the scene where a dude gets drowned in the sink, especially, and of course the bathtub also reminded me of The Grudge. Also, why would she not feel that change from the water to like the murky water? I feel like you'd notice that before you saw it, probably. I don't know, but that's just me. Little nitpicks that don't really matter. It's still the second best episode so far. Yes, and of course, going through how this episode affects character rankings, if at all, of the main characters. Again, John has not been in most of these episodes, but as a main character, I'll include him still. And in this episode, Sam takes over as my favorite, and then Dean second, and then John. This episode does make me like them both a little more. Given, like, we find out more about Dean and how, like, his mom is why he's able to do this stuff, because every day he reminds himself she wanted to be brave. Yes, it's all great stuff. I don't know, I like Sam more at this point, just like in the last episode, the last 2 episodes, Dean was more of like, to the point of the story and like, getting this ball rolling and reminding Sam what's important about all this hunting shit. In this episode, Sam's more like, to the point of like, we need to get Yellow Eyes. But he's also very helpful in the case as well. He puts aside what he wants to do and goes and does this case with Dean. He also gets hero moments. Both of them went to save Lucas. Of course, that gives them both points. At this point, I am more on Sam's side than I am on Dean's side. But like I said, I couldn't even tell you who my favorite is at this point if I'm taking everything into account, because there's so many different fucking showrunners that portray them differently and all that shit, so now that's where it's at. But yeah, one last thing, interesting that there's army men in this, and of course we know how that's going to come back later. Connection? Coincidence? I have no fucking idea, but I had to bring that up. But yeah, until next time, like, subscribe, and all that bullshit.